Thank you, Krista. That was a really great introduction. I appreciate that very much. She said a lot of things that I'll do in my personal introduction, but I'm going to jump in here. Krista asked me to start writing some articles for Alfred, and it was a really beautiful combination of my undergraduate work in music education, and then my later graduate work in therapy. In hindsight, I should have gone into music therapy in the first place, but I didn't, but it's come together later in life in a great combination. And I'm so thankful that Alfred, Krista, and this presentation has kind of put that together for me. So I combined a lot of the articles that I've written to create this presentation, and we are calling it Refresh, Refocus, and Recharge. Let me share my screen and we can get started. I'm going to share a few things at a time, and then I'm going to share one section, and then we can have some Q&A, and then I'm going to share the next, and we can have some Q&A, and then the third section. So, but let me start with a little bit of introduction of me, which Krista did do a great job of starting me out on. I do have 3 teenagers. I live in Kansas City, and I was very careful just to encourage music, not, force music, but I have kids involved in theater, in marching band, and my youngest is TBD if he will continue in high school, but he's a percussionist right now. And I have a saxophone player and all kinds of fun. They also do sports and stuff, but my life, as Krista mentioned, I have a bachelor's in vocal music ed from Wichita State, but I'm also a violinist. I just didn't finish that pesky senior recital in that area. And then later in life, I became a marriage and family therapist because I found therapy to be my passion, and working with individuals. But I have never left my true love of my first love of education and music educators. So now I have a private practice in mental health therapy, and I'm also currently active in the music theater world and doing Sister Act in one of the largest outdoor theaters in the country, in the middle of our presentation, in the middle of our shows. So this presentation is challenging me on a lot of things like boundaries and healthy balance and all of that stuff in my life, which I'm sure you all understand as educators and performers and all of that stuff. So I will be reminding myself of all of these things as we go through the next slides. I'm going to start with self-care. And self-care gets a bad rap. It's very confusing. It is very complicated in our society, but it is very essential, especially when you are pouring your life out for other people constantly. We go into helping professions, most of us, because we care about others and we want to see their lives enriched. And we are oftentimes willing to pour ourselves out so extremely that we leave ourselves depleted and exhausted. And so I want to talk a little bit about what self-care is and what self-care isn't. So self-care, a lot of times people write it off because they think that it's frivolous things like flowers and candy and, anything that makes you just get that high of, I feel good right now. But really, what self-care is more long-lasting self-investment that lasts and sustains you. Self-care also can be assumed that it needs to be spa days and candles and bubble baths and all of that stuff. Each of these things are good, and if those are your things, those are your things. And I am not saying you shouldn't be doing those things. You absolutely should. But self-care doesn't have to be luxurious. It can be, it could be things that just place yourself first and your needs above, above people and things that might suck energy away from you. It also doesn't have to be expensive. That is a lot of times why people don't do self-care, because therapy is expensive. Vacations are expensive. Gym memberships are expensive. So what I want to shift away from is the idea and the thought that we have to spend a lot of money, and then it has to be luxurious and has to be spoiled. You know, you have to spoil yourself to do self-care. What self-care actually is respecting your time limitations, valuing your calendar and your schedule. It is honoring your limitations when your body says no and you are tired and exhausted. It's healthy to build in practices that you can step back and say, my body is telling me that's enough, or my mind is telling me that's enough. That exhaustion is there for a reason, and starting to listen to it is very important. And also self-care is valuing yourself, giving yourself permission to enjoy your hobbies, and value, you know, music that you find self-fulfilling. For a long time, I didn't do this myself because I wasn't a vocal music educator, and I had neglected how much vocal music filled my soul. And as I have gotten back into it, it literally is just like a massage to my brain that I had not been having for a long time. And it is a, you know, connection with others that I had not experienced. So as you teach in classrooms, a lot of times, you know, we get involved. I think it's easy to get involved in, you know, we're doing this for others. We're creating this inspiration. We're inspiring this love of music, but we neglect that we first were in love with it at first, and we need to feed that. So I'd love to just take a couple minutes and maybe see if there's any questions about this, or if there's any conversation that would be valuable to have.
I'm not seeing a lot of questions yet, but we do have some comments that I think are worth sharing publicly. So we have from Jennifer. Oh, my chat is scrolling so fast. There we go. From Jennifer, she says, going back to a K-8 music classroom after 22 years of K-12 school counseling. Very pertinent topic.
Good.
Then Rebecca adds, taking my work and school email off of my cell phone was the best thing I ever did for my mental health. I can still log in if I need to access it, but not having those notifications 24/7 makes a world of difference.
Yeah, that will fit well in the boundaries section that we're going to talk about later.
For sure.
Good. Okay, well, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section. Refocus is the second area that I want to talk about. And as we move forward, I'm going to use those questions, you know, when, where, why, what, and how, and who. And so refocus, I like to frame in a, that we want to hold on to our when, and think back to the time of when we were inspired to teach music. In my bio in Sister Act right now, I got to share that moment that I realized I loved choral music. I was a third grader that got to be in the high school musical. And I remember looking up in the middle of Music Man and Wells Fargo Wagon and just being blown away by the big high school voices, you know, that were towering above me. And I knew in that moment that I loved it, and that I wanted to do that with my life. And that moment was really healthy and really inspiring to think back on. So remind yourself of that for every now and then, and find ways to remind yourself. I really, really love teenagers and are inspired by teenagers. And I forgot that for a while, that I wasn't teaching or being a therapist. And they energize me in a way that that nothing else does. And so, but yet if I was in the classroom day by day, they would probably also very much exhaust me, especially as I have 3 at home. So ways to remind myself of why I'm doing this, you know, what the original inspiration was, is really good. And you can put, you know, a picture of your first program in your office. You could put pictures of, you know, your first students, things like that, and intentionally glance at those things to remind yourself and keep yourself grounded in why you're doing this. Also protect your what. So what is the limit of the amount of things that you can do in one time? I wrote an article that was about teaching music and having to do all of the things that you all have to do constantly. And I think we labeled it making spaghetti with octopus arms. And it was a silly title and a silly way to describe that in music education, we're expected to, you know, be at the piano, think about administrators, classroom manage, all of these things that are all the time doing a million things at once. And as a therapist, if someone came in and described a profession that I didn't understand and told me that they were having to do all of those things at once, I would probably say, whoa, wait, why are you having to do all of these things at once? So giving ourselves permission to say, we do have limits. We are limited human beings that cannot do a million things at one time. And communicating that to others that may want to railroad those things and just tell us that we have to. It will burn us out, and it will leave you not being a teacher if you're expected to do too much at one time. So protecting that stuff is important. So protecting your what also has to do with what are the signs when you that you see when you are working outside of your what. So maybe take a minute and list the things that that you start acting in or behaving or saying or clashing with others when you become exhausted. So I personally start snapping at my children like everyone does. I start, you know, doing the dishes and slamming around the silverware. And, you know, at work, I could just feel exhausted and unmotivated and not want to do what I normally am empowered and inspired to do. If I go through a long amount of time where those things aren't there for me, the inspiration isn't there, the energy isn't there, then I feel like I'm working outside of what I am purposed to do. And then I need to stop doing some things that are not healthy for me. So that is another, I'm just glancing at my notes, making sure that I said everything that I wanted to on that topic. Does anyone have any comments or anything to add to that section? Oh, I can't hear you, Felicia.
You would think by now I know to unmute. We did have a question. Someone asked, besides modeling, how can we best help and support our colleagues?
Besides modeling healthy health.
That's how I read it, yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that we can encourage honest and real communication with administrators and school. I've tried to show up to my school board meetings and support teachers and let them know what we were asking teachers to do is just sometimes humanly impossible. So if our colleagues are, don't have an accompanist or are not being supported in a certain way, speaking to administrators and to each other, I think is an important way and a good way to help support each other. And also just reminding one another, asking each other, how are you doing? How exhausted are you? How encouraged are you to do this work that we're doing? And reminding one another of what we're here for. I'm kind of on the fence about vent sessions. That's in mental health, it's kind of a debate, like, when is it healthy to vent, when is it not healthy to vent? If venting leaves you, if you meet with another teacher and you're just, it is good to get out that so-and-so kid is a nightmare and it's really hard, in your class that has, these certain kids in it at this time of day is exhausting. Pay attention to your body and how that feels after you do that. If it was releasing to get some of that out, then I would say that was probably healthy. If you leave that time feeling more worked up and more tense and more upset with either what you shared or what they shared, then I would say that's a sign that that probably wasn't a healthy vent session and that you need to limit yourself doing that as yourself or for others. So I hope that helps in that area. I will go ahead and move on. I believe to the most important session. It kind of ties all of this together somehow, and that is boundaries. Boundaries is a word like self-care that is often shared, and it's popularized, especially mental health people laugh. It's so wonderful how TikTok, and everything modernizes everything we talk about, but also can have its mind of its own and become, these cultural phenomena that get very confusing out there. So I want to talk about boundaries for a while. And one of my favorite articles that I wrote was about, I tied together notation and how notation defines for us what to do in a musical score. And boundaries do the same thing for our lives. In the same way that boundaries define when to start our day or our life or our job, they also tell us when to end our day, our life, and our job. They tell us, that a piece of music tells us what voice part we're singing or what instrument we're playing. And if those things are not defined, then everything is chaos in an ensemble. And the same thing is with boundaries. If we are just doing the job that's in front of us, we're just constantly moving from one thing to the other, we are fulfilling everyone's needs and not defining our own, we will just end up in chaos in ourselves and in our lives and relationships with others. So it's important to define those things. I'll read what I have on the screen and then discuss a little bit and relate it to notation as we go along or at the end. But professional life boundaries can look like, who can you lean on for empowerment and encouragement, which we just talked about, possible colleagues and things like that. So who can you lean on for empowerment, encouragement, and know and trust yourself if you don't feel like someone is empowering and encouraging to you, and limit your time that you have with them. and that my next thing is, who do you need to limit your engagement with? That's a very important question, and an okay question to ask yourself. How is your professional life divided from your personal life? We can talk about rituals that you can put in place that separate your work time from your professional time. One thing that I like to do, and that we're trained as therapists, and I was not trained as a educator, but I believe that I really needed this in the classroom, to create a way to define, okay, now I'm leaving work and I'm picking up my home life. If I'm sitting in my office and I have a very difficult client situation, I had learned, and my school supported me and taught me how to leave that situation in my office. And when I close my door, I can have a ritual where I, imagine getting that off my body, or I close my door and lock with my keys, and that's me locking that in there. If someone's in danger and all of that stuff, that's a completely different scenario, but it's a way to separate. I'm now leaving my work life and I'm going to my personal life. You could also develop a place you drive. Maybe you drive across a highway or a river on your way home. You can think, okay, now this is my dividing line, where work is over here and home is over here. If you have to work at home, maybe just have a work bag and a work or space on your desk that is for work, and don't crowd it over into your other life. I know that some of this stuff may sound totally unreasonable as educators, because you all have so much on your plate, but I'm trying to give you suggestions that hopefully will help, and maybe you can adapt them into things that work for you. So also the last how there is, do you naturally move at a tempo? So going along with that notation example, a lot of people are presto people. they can function at a pace that is very fast and very has a lot of things going on, a whole bunch of instruments in their symphony and all of that stuff. I am not a presto person. I am allegro at best, and so I also do not do well with a lot of things going on at one time. And that I really have learned to accept myself and be okay with it. If I was a class mom, I was just a class mom. I could not fulfill any other jobs that anything else required of me in the school. And I really couldn't even be a class mom at best, once I started doing things like going back to school. So it's okay to say no, and it's okay to say, I can't do that and I'm tired. You don't even have to give people the reason that you're tired. You can just say no, because your piece of music doesn't require you to do that, and it's okay. Okay, so personal life questions you can ask yourself is, who drains you and how much can you give them? A lot of people have, families of origin that are just exhausting, and it is okay to say, I could only give them an hour on a Sunday. That is okay to do. And a lot of times people just need to hear that. And who energizes you, and how much time do you need from them? So it's okay to ask your colleagues, you know what, I really enjoy our time together, and you inspire me to continue being a choir teacher. Can we have lunch once a month? Those are great things to think about, and ways to keep your recharged battery full. How is another thing of, how are you depleted from your energy, and how can you limit that depletion? this is a funny example, but I realized a long time ago that, and this also kind of has to do with self-care, that my family is exhausted when the laundry in our home is all on one person, and it's not done on a certain time of the week. Everything else can be chaos in our house. You know, the dishes cannot be done. The lawn isn't mowed. But if we are all doing laundry on a schedule and not digging through baskets, when Monday morning hits, that makes the week go so much better. I'm not saying that right now I don't have a million laundry baskets that are completely unfolded at my house, but that is a thing that I know is a healthy thing for my household to do in order to function healthy. The baskets are there right now, and it's a really big disaster. But I know when school hits, if I can get my kids to focus on that and to function in that, that is something that helps us move, you know, in a smoother pace. And that's a great example of self-care as well. So how are you energized, and how can you do more of that? I am actually right now, I think I'm learning about myself that right now is not the time to be in community theater, but I do love participating in attending concerts. So I'm energized by listening to performances and going to things and all of that, but the depletion of my energy is just being depleted. And I tried something and I enjoyed it, and but moving forward, I think for the, you know, while I have 3 kids in upper school and, you know, their stuff's about to hit, I'm just not going to be able to do what I'm doing right now. So that's just a little example of that. So I will close this section by saying that let's keep in mind why we are doing that. Because students, I know you all are doing your job because you know that students are worth it. Students are learning music. Students are learning life skills. I'm telling my daughter now when she comes home and doesn't have, you know, maybe the best attitude about other kids in her theater class or whatever, I tell her, Eliza, music and arts education is not about who can be the best. It's about giving kids life skills in ways that only the arts has the ability to do that for them. It's not about making professional musicians, although that is fabulous when it does. It is about giving humans something to enjoy for the rest of their lives, and be a part of their community and a part of the arts, and just have a healthier, expanded world. And I know you all are passionate about that, and I love that. So hang on to that. That students are worth it. And also music is worth it. Music, absolutely. The more I learned about mental health and trauma resolution, even, music has the ability to do so many healthy mental health aspects in our world and in our lives. I realized when I was in high school that I would feel much better after my orchestra class, and it was because I was using bilateral stimulation, which is something that the educators now know, you know, crossing the midline helps you regulate emotions. And I would have, you know, a hard class with a miserable friend, or get broken up with a boyfriend, but I could go to choir, or I could go to orchestra, do the bilateral stimulation, which we didn't know we were doing in the 90s, and leave class feeling more regulated and more at peace. And I really think that is a big reason why kids in music do better in life. So you're also teaching lifetime skills. My bio in Sister Act right now just says it asks for advice, you know, you give to somebody, or that you give to people out there. And I said, learn music and learn music and theater. It is it's a lifetime skill that will last you, and you can enjoy it. My daughter also plays softball, and let's see, I don't have a kid in a sport. They happen to be doing sports that they can do the rest of their lives, but a lot of things kids are involved in school are limited, especially in sports, that they won't be able to do the rest of their lives. And music is not like that. And I love that. I love it. So how to do this for a lifetime is to value yourself, to care for yourself and protect yourself, because you are your resource. Without you, all of the stuff you're passionate about and all the people that are being cared for and all of the music that's being produced is just not going to happen. But you are worth it, because you were intended to do this right now, and you are making things happen that you love and you're passionate about. So I wanted to leave you with encouragement for that. I think that Felicia may be passing out my slide deck, which also contains the articles that I wrote. There's work boundaries, self-care, multicultural competence, life boundaries, and accepting limitations. Touches on a lot of what I've talked about today, but also expands on each of these areas that we discussed. So I think that's it. Felicia, are there any questions or comments that have come up?
There are so many comments. You've got a lot of people really resonating with these topics.
Oh, good.
One of the things that I've been seeing a lot of is talking about how hard it is to say no to those people who drain the energy from you. And I'm wondering if you can speak to advice you might give to someone who it is difficult to say no, or they feel afraid to say no, or there's that guilt that comes with that.
Yeah. In my own personal therapy, someone told me this and it really clicked. And I love to tell clients this. Someone asked me, I was sharing how hard it was to say no to someone because they wanted this and they are asking me for this, and this person asked me, what makes their emotions more important than your emotions? I was feeling exhausted. I was feeling limited. I was feeling like I couldn't say yes, but I was placing the other person's needs or requests or feelings above my own. And sometimes that needs to happen. With our kids, we absolutely have to function in that area, but not always. Our feelings and our emotions, and your feelings, your emotions, your limitations are just as important as the person that's asking you to run over yours or just asking you for something and you have to say no. It's okay for you to say no, because your limitations and emotions are just as important as theirs.
Felicia, if I can just jump in real quick. I see several comments about people pleasing, and I think that's something a lot of teachers deal with. Can you speak on that?
People pleasing is oftentimes, and I am a recovering people pleaser too. Honestly, if I had not gone to school to become a therapist, I would still be functioning in my constant people pleasing mode too. But I knew it wasn't working. And I knew I needed to change what I was doing. And I'm so glad that I spent my own time in my individual therapy and in spaces where I learned to not people please so much, because people pleasing is a constant void that will never be filled. We can never people please others enough, that everyone will be satisfied. There's always going to be more. And also it takes some deep work sometimes to stop people pleasing, because oftentimes we don't feel like good people if we say no. And you really have to develop an inner voice that says, I'm still okay if that person doesn't think I am. So I encourage to, if you're a people pleaser, like I am, to work on, you know, why am I a people pleaser? What set me on this road to need to feel like people can't get mad at me, or people can't be displeased with me? And how can you start tolerating that space a little more of making people unhappy and still being okay yourself?
Thank you for that. I saw also a couple of questions come in, commenting on your crossing the midline discussion, and asking if you can go a little bit more in depth for that, or provide some resources about that.
Oh, cool. Yes. Thank you for asking about that. I didn't mean to make an assumption that educators know what I'm talking about. So there was a discovery in therapy about 30 years ago, and a kind of therapy that developed from that called EMDR, which is eye movement rapid desensitization. And they discovered that if your eyes go back and forth like they do in REM sleep, your emotions can regulate themselves, and you can also process trauma at the same time. So there's something about, there's something about, and I wish I could explain more of the science in a short time, but doing anything that takes your body from over here and crosses your body from over here. Like doing that exercise, you know, where you touch your toes, that can be extremely regulating. And emotional regulation is, if you're anxious way up high or you're depressed way down here, it's regulating your emotions, is bringing yourself back to the center and back to more of a not perfectly calm space, but a more tolerable, I'm okay space. So so when I was playing the violin and I was crossing the midline. So as you do this and you play piano, you do that too. Ways that our brain works when we're doing music, even vocal music, crosses our left brain and our right brain. So it's creating more communication between our left brain and our right brain, which we have discovered regulates our emotions and even processes trauma. So that's a very quick. So EMDR, I would say resources on that would be looking up what EMDR is. I do a form of therapy called accelerated resolution trauma. Accelerated resolution therapy, ART. And we utilize bilateral stimulation, which is crossing the midline, to process trauma and create some more emotional stabilization.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your time and for your information that you shared with all of us, your expertise and your wisdom. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.